It's Craggy's Connacht Rugby Podcast. It's the midweek podcast prior to the visit of Glasgow to Connacht as two unbeaten teams meet in round two of the URC. On the call today, we've got Danny Deegan. Hiya, Danny.
Hi, how's it going?
And Rob Murphy. Rob, you're back again.
I know. How's everyone?
Oh, good. You guys were the guys who brought us through the match on Saturday, so now we've had a couple of days to think about it. We will mention a couple of other items. So the running time today is we'll have a quick review of the Ospreys game. We'll talk about this World Rugby tournament that's blocking out all the Tier 2 nations effectively and the extension of the World Cup. And then we'll just mention that the women's team had another good win at the weekend before we preview Glasgow. So we got your immediate thoughts after the match, Rob. Have you looked back at it again? What are your thoughts now, a couple of days later?
That it was a low enough standard game that it won't really tell us a whole lot about exactly where Connacht are either way, I guess. It shows some probably slightly more negative than positive in terms of how bad the Ospreys were and how we let them back in. But the bottom line is it's 5 points, which is unusual for us. And if we can start well this year, considering what we did last year, it could be a really, really good season for Connacht. So look, I think when it comes to Interprovincials, Champions Cup and the playoffs in this competition, that's when you find out what kind of team you are. If you don't make the playoffs, you know you're not a great side because there's a lot of bad teams in this league and the Ospreys are one of them.
Yeah, Danny, what are your thoughts? Because I look back at it and my initial thing was I felt like Europe, but when I look back at it, I thought, we weren't quite as bad as I thought we were. What your thoughts, Dan?
Yeah. I'm going to be the other side of it. I'm actually quite happy with it. Come away with 5 points. Yeah, give them one, but didn't give them a losing bonus. It's the first game of the season. Whole new kind of like backroom staff. I'm not going to say coaching ticket because it's not all new, but backroom staff, new ideas. I liked how the pack were. Pack were aggressive, getting in Osprey's face. Second half would worry me a bit, but at the same time, went and got the bonus point try and then didn't give up a losing bonus. Like there was a lot of kind of new combinations that back three with Smith at fullback, who is not generally a fullback, hasn't played there since school. So, look, it's not perfect, but I don't want to be perfect first game of the season. I want to be perfect in Europe. I want to be perfect in the Interpros. So, look, you want stuff to work on after the first game, is the way I would look at it.
Yeah, I suppose if you look at it, like 6 new caps, the last time we had that many players, brought new players on was Eric Elwood in 2011 when he brought 7 players on and we only barely beat Benetton.
Good start, Alan, good start.
You know me, I like to have a good stat to throw in somewhere along the way. But yeah, so yeah, like I was excited by some of the stuff I saw. I wasn't quite as pleased with the fact that although, talking in the press conference, which everyone will have heard at this stage, what I heard from John Muldoon and Cathal Ford was that they still want to work on they like having stuff to work on and they want to fix things. Actually, that was the other thing that was Pete was on Galway Bay last night with William and the over the line crew, and he talked about it as well. They want them to be able to solve problems on the field.
But they're not solving problems over the last 2 years, Pete Wilkins included. They have one major issue that is back again, day one, which is this ability to fall apart at the seams, like no team I know. And you can talk about figuring it out, but 26 points to 7 after the half-hour mark against an abject opposition. Of course, it's brilliant that we scored as many tries as we did. Of course, it's not to be taken for granted that the Osprey side that finished was much stronger than the one that started. All those things, young team, combinations, fully expect us to get better, fully expect us to learn. But I would like to just understand the mentality of this group over the last 4 or 5 years that is capable of such outrageous collapses. And I've said this before, and I'm saying it again. No, it didn't affect us last year. We got to playoffs and finish in top 4, so maybe it doesn't matter. But I don't like the side of it. Don't like what's happening. And I don't think I see it in other teams that are around the level Connacht are by the end of the season.
Good point. Yeah, can't argue too much with that because my only argument was that we didn't fully fall apart, and then that could be down to the fact that the Ospreys weren't good enough to fully put us away. But
and Colin Ford was so bloody good off that line out. Oh, he's so good.
He is. He's excellent. And you know, the fact that we stole that Niall Murray went on and got his first steal of the season. You know, man has stole nearly twice as many as anyone else last season, and the first thing he does is goes on and steals in the line out. Actually, people would have heard. I asked John that. I said, you know, what do you do? How impressed have you been? And he puts him in the top line out players in the world. From what he's seen, he puts him up there with Woki from France. That his ability to change how he's doing things and what pictures he's showing, so you can't find what his trigger is he said it's world class. You know, hopefully Ireland get to notice that a little bit too, Danny.
Yeah, definitely. Like as a line operator, I absolutely adore Niall Murray. He's unbelievably quick. He gets so far off the ground. And anybody that hasn't lifted in the line-out, if a guy jumps and his ass is, say, above shoulder height when you're grabbing him, you don't have much to do as a lifter. So you're going to go extra high, you know. He's incredible in the line-out, on attack and defence.
So, Danny, why didn't they start him? And why does he miss out on the start in a big game? Like, I know we're going back 18 months now, but the big games against Leinster a couple of seasons ago.
Different time. That's
for the Leinster one, but why not start him yesterday?
Last week, it'd be a better question if he doesn't start this week. First game of the season, you know, it's hard to go off. Maybe Dowling was doing better in training. Maybe
and Dowling played very, very well. By the way, I thought Dowling had an excellent game.
Oh yeah, definitely. And like I guess maybe they just wanted to see what Dowling would bring, because Dowling has that ability to play at 6 as well. He played a number of games at 6, or he moved back into 6. A couple of times last year. The other case is that it comes back to, and the whole thing with Leinster is game plan. So
you're going back to the Leinster game where he didn't start 2 years ago. That was a game plan thing.
Game plan thing. I thought at the time they picked Leva.
What's his name? Leva,
wasn't it?
Yeah.
In my eyes, as a forward, I'd be like, right, they're looking to match the opposition or bully them, and I'd be looking at Dowling and Big Joe Joyce as a case of, right, they want to do something similar. And it's not that Niall Murray can't do that. But
that's my point, because if we're talking about him for Ireland, I kind of go, well, if there's a whole section and a type of game that we don't pick him in, you know where I'm going with it. I'm not necessarily saying this is definite, because it's only game one, but if that's the case, does that work against him? No,
because look at Tyke Byrne. You wouldn't say Tyke Byrne's an enforcer.
But Tyke Byrne plays every big game that matters for Munster. He's not
but you're saying that he can't play. Like, are we looking at him in a different way? And I'm looking at him. So in general in a pack, you've got your hefty 5 enforcer, then you've got your 4, your more mobility, the guy that's going to go after stuff. That's Tyke Byrne. I think that's where Niall Murray fits in better than 5.
I just worry about whatever they see. You know, that, like, what are they seeing that, like, it's way too soon. It's game one, and John Muldoon has just gone into a press conference with Alan, by the sound of things, and put him alongside Woki. So I think we can be safe to say that if we're in the Niall Murray camp, things are looking good because the coaches believe in him and everyone can see what he did from the bench. So I get that, but I'm just like, it's always in the back of my mind that they took that call. I didn't like at the time. I know why you're explaining it, but I did not like that our first 2 choices in that Leinster semi-final, that Andy Friend took the decision to take them out. I'd never liked that call, and I never will like that call. They were the foreign players, and I'm just worried that might be coming back. Alan, sorry.
He's only 24.
Okay, I hear you.
Which meant he was only 22 in that game.
Still didn't like that call. I mean, you were picking him all year, and then
I agree.
That was his. But to be honest, we forget that was his breakthrough season as well.
It was, yeah.
So
you've seen the documentary. You saw his reaction to that. That hurt.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
of course,
which
is great to see.
But it comes back to the idea that we don't trust guys. We don't trust young enough guys. Like,
this is the Irish problem as well. This is
if they're good enough, they're old enough. It's simple. Kiwis, the Aussies, Saffron, they've been doing it for years. Probably since they started doing it. We need to do the same thing.
Look at Colin Ford. He's 21. 21.
Yeah. I wouldn't be looking into a case of that, right, Niall Murray's not starting. It's a case of, he's not in favour, or that kind of thing.
Or there's a type of game that they feel like he doesn't suit, because that would worry me. If he's going to be what we think he can be, he needs to suit pretty much all types of games. Now, obviously, he needs a foil, that's like you've described there. So he's obviously, you can't have two Niall Murrays in your second row, realistically, two of those types of players. So I get that. But you want to know that if he's at his best, there's a place for him no matter who we're playing. And I guess my question to you is, do you feel confident that if Niall Murray's at his best, he's a first choice Connacht player in the biggest game?
Yes.
Okay.
But the way I'd look at that is that, right, if Niall's at his best, if Oisín Dowland's at his best, Joe Joyce is at his best, Dara is at his best.
Who are you picking?
And someone I noticed while I was just waiting for training a little bit early today, Gavin Thornbury was back scrummaging with them today. He played 60 minutes for Black Rock at the weekend. Was it Black Rock?
But the only thing I'm going to say, lads, the only thing I'm going to say is if we just even throw out there about Ireland, he's got to be ahead of Oisín Dowling. He's got to be ahead of Gavin Thornbury. Like, he's got to be well ahead of them. No offense to the boys, but or they've got to be well ahead of him, and then they're getting the Ireland slot. But one of the things that probably works against Connacht players like Niall Murray in terms of Irish panels, I think at times, is actually the depth we have now, which is funny. Mm-hmm. But maybe, even Conor Oliver might find it hard to get back into that back row. So if someone turns around and goes, why isn't Conor Oliver getting picked for Ireland? If he doesn't nail down a Connacht jersey, unfortunately, there's no way they're going to look at him.
Yeah, absolutely. But I don't think any Connacht player can look at nailing down any sort of Ireland spot or getting close to an Ireland team until we win all our home games in the Interpros. And that includes a full strength Leinster, because they're the guys who set the standards in Irish rugby. And yes, we didn't make it to a semi-final, but only by the width of a leg, and most of the team were made up from Leinster players, and quite rightly so, because they were the best players in those positions for practically every one of them. You couldn't really argue, or not. Well, I'd argue with anyone that the team that was picked was about as good a team as we could pick. I don't see how.
Sorry, you're talking about Ireland World Cup.
I'm talking about Ireland World Cup quarterfinal now, and what I'm saying is, for Connacht players to get to that level, they need to be winning their home Interpros.
I agree.
Minimum.
That's a good point.
And
a semi-final doesn't wash for an Irish management team. It does wash from the point of view of the IRFU, and the Irish management team will be happy for them. Yeah. But you want to really make an impression as a group of individual and collective players. You're absolutely right, Alan. You got to win the big crunch games. Champions Cup probably a throw in there as well. Win your Champions Cup home game. It's like an Interpro.
Absolutely.
Except I disagree with that because of how they've selected guys in the past going into.
For those games, those fixtures.
Doesn't matter whether we win, lose, or draw. I think the Connacht guys need to just focus on playing well for Connacht. If you get picked, you get picked. You can't.
Well, that's the best way.
I know, but
win to an Interpro.
Interpros is where you have your chance. They're like trial matches. They used to be trial matches. The Interpros, effectively. Yeah. That's why there used to be a final trial, because the Interpros were the trial matches, and then the final trial was when they got picked the Blues and the Whites.
Yeah, I get that, but when you look at some of the selections that have gone on over the last 4 years, you've got guys that are sitting on Leinster's bench, including on Champions Cup and stuff like that, getting picked ahead of guys starting. So if I'm honest, if I was a Connacht player, I'm not thinking about it unless I get a call. You can't think about it. And maybe people disagree with it, but I'm like, no, screw it. Let's think about Connacht. Let's get my game right. Let's make it work here.
Yeah, absolutely.
If I'm good enough here, and whether I'm starting or not, it's about being in a squad, and it's about performing at your best every time you come on the pitch. Whether you're starting,
that's all fine.
Come on about 20 minutes.
That's all fine, but I think we're talking about two different things here. Like, I mean, we're talking about a completely. It's not that. Sorry, that's all fine. This misses your point. It's a very strong point, Danny. Sorry, but like, it's the separate point, I think, is unfortunately so much of this is perception. So if we are talking from the outside perspective, where are they going to make the biggest impact? I think they could be outside the squad and on the bench for 5 or 6 weeks, get called in, have a stormer over 2 weeks over Christmas, and get picked for Ireland. That's and I concur with Alan, because unfortunately, for all the brilliance and the innovation that Andy Farrell and his crew have brought to Irish rugby, and I totally agree with Alan, I think he picked the strongest team. They still have that inner built fear, and the evidence is quite clear in how they kept the players on the bench when it mattered. This sense of lack of trust, and I think maybe not even lack of trust. There's a conservatism there. Okay, fair count. Yeah, that's actually better. Yeah, I agree with you.
It's just pure conservatism, and it creeped back in right at the end. Right at the end, it crept in. Right up to the World Cup. Right up to the first round of the World Cup. everything was fine because we weren't exactly sure who was getting. You had a fair idea, but there was always chances of people coming in. And then the World Cup started, and they just went, no, we're just going to pick the same players all the time.
And it's a fine line because, you know, I keep going on about Johnny Sexton was off the field at the end of every All Black win, and someone else like Joey Carberry came on and saw it out. But Johnny Sexton was on the field in Paris in that famous drop goal in the last play. So no one was turning around to them then and saying, oh, why didn't you take Johnny Sexton off? So maybe they felt this is the one time where we can do that. And if we had won, would you or I or Danny or anyone be talking about it?
And we still, and as you know, we came so close to winning. But let's forget about that World Cup. Before we go back to Connacht, we do have one more thing to talk about, because the World Rugby have just announced they've finalised and got that World, what's it called? I don't even know what's bloody called. I'm no interest in it. World League or something. It's a global calendar for women's rugby, which is absolutely brilliant, and we'll talk about the WXV in a second and come back to that. And there's a global calendar for the men with new competitions, but like you're talking about the extension of the World Cup to 24 teams, which is ludicrous, because there was too many blowouts in this one, and it's only going to get worse in the next one.
It does mean one less game, which is good.
Yeah, doesn't mean that there isn't going to be as many blowouts, though. You're going to add more blowouts to it. I know. Game,
definitely. But I just, at least Ireland can rotate their team, and they can't find a way to put us in a group with the top 5 teams.
Oh, 3 of the top 5 teams, yeah. But on the plus side, isn't it great to see that the women are being treated so well, and that they have a full-on tournament that they can keep going with the WXV, and hopefully it'll be run at a time where they'll get a little bit of exposure, because Ireland had yet another good win at the weekend. Expected, but still, it has to be done. We have 2 tries. That was
the Connacht game, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was, yeah. Ireland won 64-3 against Colombia. They're now a point ahead of Spain, and they meet Spain at 2:00 on Saturday, which will be on the same time roughly as the Connacht Glasgow game. But anyway, let's just celebrate the fact that Ireland are back to winning ways. Tries again. There was a try from Maeve Deely, and she kicked 2 conversions as well. I think there was 2 tries from Bevan Parsons, so she's on the flyer. Former Connacht player Edel McMahon also scored. And Aoibhinn Riley got a good 56 minutes, I think, starting as the starting scrum half. And then Clara Barrett made her debut at the weekend. So another excellent work from the Connacht players in that to get that win, and they have a huge game on Saturday against Spain. And Packie's managed to join us just in time for the preview of the Glasgow game. The A team are back together. Grand Rob.
Hold on. I mean, I've actually turned up on time today, and I'm still looked as an outsider. It took
a bit of extra to get Packie released from his jail cell, like as they normally do at the start of the A team. So.
Do you know what I feel like? I feel like Packie's Bundy Aki, and I'm Cathal Ford here. I feel like I'm just being usurped now because Packie's back in. That's what's happening.
Hold on a minute.
You don't want to be that side of the coin, do you?
Yeah, maybe I have the seniority, all right, but yeah, okay.
Right, weekend. We're playing Glasgow. Everyone thought when we looked at this, well, Glasgow, the Scottish players won't be back. But then at the weekend, a whole load of their Scottish internationals are playing, and they absolutely wallop Leinster. And they really did a job on them in the scrum and the forwards. If these guys turn up, it's going to be one heck of a battle, and we're going to learn an awful lot about Connacht this weekend. What do you think, Niall?
Exactly what you said. That's what I think. If they turn up like that, like to be honest with you, there's a world of a difference. There seems to be a world of a difference anyway between playing Leinster, albeit they're very callow, and playing the Ospreys. To be fair, Leinster are still quality. Like a lot of those players are still quality. But I was watching it. Glasgow just took them to the cleaners. I'd say Nigel was really happy with that. But they were really flying. The pitch won't make much difference to them either, I think.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Yeah,
and
it's going to be a dinger because they're going to, the fellas coming off World Cup, they're likely pissed off at how it went. And Glasgow are quality, like they're a quality team. So
Franco Smith, their head coach, is the only head coach of Benetton to get a win in the Sportsground. When he was in charge of Benetton. Our record against Franco Smith while he was in charge of Benetton was 1-3, lost 2, drawn 1. Since then, we've only lost twice to Benetton. So He's a pretty decent coach, and as you say, Nigel's back in there as well, and he knows his way around the sports ground too. So it's going to be a huge game. It'll be fascinating to see how the weather is. I haven't seen the forecast for that length of time yet, but hopefully it's decent and we get a cracking game.
Yeah, for sure. Like they've serious danger out wide, and like you said, their scrum at the weekend just pulverised Leinster. I don't know, like Leinster's props are kind of enough, but Glasgow really, they're really torrent.
To me, they looked a lot more switched on, and maybe not switched on is not the right word, but wanted it more. They reacted faster. They just 50-50s. They made sure went their way. It wasn't a case of they made their own look kind of a thing by doing everything right and working like dogs from what I saw.
Yeah, well, I'm just looking at the weather forecast is relatively good at the moment for the weekend, and the bookies have Connacht as 2-point favourites. Rob, what do you reckon? Will you be taking a bit of that?
Always back my team. Always would never be found wanting in that department. Yeah, I suppose it's hard to know. It's a really interesting clash, like you said. Like the Welsh teams are stone cold useless in this competition at the moment. Once again, and whatever's going on, we hope that changes. But they're not good. Dependent on the
it's money. It's a lack of money and small squads.
I guess that sentence was we don't have time for that in this podcast. Would be a better way to put that.
Exactly.
But right now, but we can get back to it. Of course, Zebre showed some good signs last week. Ulster have their problems, but by and large, this is a competition where maybe so we got 10 teams going for 8 slots, maybe. And Glasgow are right there. In fact, Glasgow could be a cut above us as the season goes on. It's a monster opportunity. You talked about Interpros earlier, Alan. I think a Glasgow home game kind of feels to me at Interpro level intensity.
It does, because they finished 4th last year. They lost the quarterfinal to Munster. Like this is a top notch team, and it really will give us an idea of where we stand.
Arguably tougher than the Ulster fixture the following week.
I agree, absolutely. Certainly the way Ulster played. How the referee didn't give a penalty try to Zebra at the end of that game, I will never know. 3 scrums went down on the 5-metre line. He eventually gives them another penalty, but Ulster substitute there have to, the prop is sin binned. Then Ulster don't have a prop, so it goes to a non-contested scrum. So Zebra say, "Oh, we won't do that. We'll run it and then knock the ball on." But it should have been a penalty try. They were going to score. It was an absolute definitive try if the referee had let the scrum play on, and he didn't, and it should have been a penalty try, and Ulster would have been beaten by Zebra.
Ulster aren't in a great place. Connacht have really just got to knuckle down here and dig out a result. And I think they can build on a lot of positivities.
I'm just looking at Glasgow here. They've got 23 Scottish internationals. They've got 3 Argentinian ones. They've got a Tongan in there as well, and an American with a couple of 3 different South African players who haven't made it into the international scene, but are obviously decent players. I think this is a huge ask for Connacht at the weekend, especially with considering the quality of player these guys have, and it'll be really, really interesting to see if we can raise our game and match these guys.
There's a double-edged sword in that, though, Alan. That Glasgow, I know that their pre-season was disrupted a lot because they had so many players missing. Even notwithstanding the quality of their squad, they have a huge number of internationals. Basically, I think almost every player is an international, bar maybe whatever local fella.
It's about I think there's less than a quarter of them who aren't internationals.
Yeah, so I had things that it didn't affect them in any way, shape, or form last weekend against Leinster, but I just kind of wonder as well. They were on the front foot the whole time. Obviously, it's an awful lot easier to play when you're on the front foot. I'm not dressing it down at all, but I think that they'll. It could be a little bit different for them, coming to Galway at the weekend, and
to a much better scrummaging side than the Leinster side that they had out.
Yeah,
because I'm just looking at a Leinster front row the weekend. Jack Boyle, John McKee, and Thomas Clarkson. I'm going, they're all kids. and they were up against Ollie Kebbell, Angus Fraser, and Xander Fagerson. We were the Scottish starting pack, But our guys I'd be quite happy with our guys to sort of, certainly the way Jack Ainger played last weekend. I thought he was enormous last weekend. I thought he's really coming on leaps and bounds.
He is. It started to, I think, probably because of the first game, whatever, the scrum started to come under real pressure in the second half last weekend, I thought as well. The panel scrum. But up to that, certainly he was flying it. Like he's very good in open play. His rook work is brilliant. I love the way he clears fellas out. He's an angry, nasty streak to him, which is
some big hits as well.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Are we expecting many changes at the weekend then? Are we expecting many? Because we do have, that's the first game of 11 in a row, and this a trip to South Africa in the middle of that as well. So I assume we're going to see some changes along the way.
Yeah, I'd say you'll see a change in the back three. I'd say a more definite fullback will play if they have one to put in there.
Well, Porch is still out. We were told that today, but John Porch is still not available. So Tiernan could come back in.
Change in the back three. But I'd see that as a possible weak spot.
I think Smith looked a little bit out of place there now, to be honest.
He did, touch did fairly well, but
did his best.
It was a big ask to ask him to play back.
Of course, it was.
I think he did well. I'd like to see him again. I'd like to see him on the wing.
Absolutely agree.
The one thing I would say is, yes, he struggled a little bit defensively, but the amount of talk he did and covering of the pitch, I thought is quite decent. He was constantly yapping. Now, I'm not sure if that came across on the TV, but standing in this crowd, you would constantly hear this guy talking. Something that I thought of Shane Jennings when we saw him last year as well.
I'd like to see him again. Wonder how he's getting on. Yeah, there's options, but I would say Tiernan O'Halloran or something is the most likely if they don't go with Andrew Smith. I would say they more likely go with Andrew Smith again, because if you don't have John Porch coming back, I'd like to see a bit of Liam McNamara as well. But Kilgallen played really well, so
there's one criticism I'd have of Jeremy, is that he's not aggressive enough for a man of his size. Okay. He lost there was a couple of 50-50 balls. I'd like to have seen him win at least one of them. He should have been. He was taller than the guy he was jumping up against, and didn't show enough aggression, I didn't think. So it's something I'd like. But the rest of his game, I think, is brilliant. I think his defensive cover now is much better. And he's lightning on the ball. He's a really good ball carrier. But the kicks in the air, I'd like to see a bit more from a guy who's 6'5".
I think the three of them. Do think the back three need to up their game a bit from last weekend.
Yeah.
But in saying that, there's a big ask for the ball. Neither of them was a fullback, and they were playing without a fullback as such. You're playing with three wingers. It's difficult enough.
Yeah, and they're all very young. Like, there's very little experience in there, very little experience, and you want to have, the fullback is normally one of the spine of the team. You want to have someone there who knows, who feels comfortable in his position, feels comfortable in his own skin.
This is where we're at our weakest, lads, isn't it? Our backs, basically, because you got Blade, and then you're just hoping Riley takes a huge step forward this year to back him up. So if we say that you want three strong players on the bench and a strong starting lineup, and everyone's fit and available, you're bringing Aki back in. He's competing with Ford and Farrell. Probably starting again. Hansen on the wing. And after that, then all the guys we're talking about, that's it. Like, it's not like John Porch is the other one, and a lot of players need to step forward.
In the backs, the two spots you'd be worried about is our depth at 9, because of
depth at 9.
Yeah. I think Riley's good enough. He's shown enough talent there to come through. You've got Devine, who I would hope would be getting a chance this year. And then
Michael McDonald, the guy we got from Ulster.
Sorry, I forgot about McDonald. Yes, and
he's ex-Aussie under 20s, and he's only 24. So I'd like to see a little bit of what's there, as a possibility.
And what I'm saying is, like, depth chart is guys that are, Blade has obviously played a lot with Carthy. Blade's played with Ford. There's a bit of familiarity.
Yeah.
I'd say we'd probably see a lot more 9 starting this year. At fullback, Cordero, Santi Cordero getting injured is I thought he was the signing to bring in to kind of solidify that position, because it has been an issue in the past.
But we're forgetting Byron Rustin looks really good. And Shane Bolton as well looked really good against Munster. I'm excited if we could get both those lads getting a bit of a run of rugby. Ralston, for now in particular, he's ahead of Bolton. There's possibilities. Okay.
If I'm honest, I think I'd be looking at him to be kind of pushing Farrell. Like, now Farrell's in cracking form and so is forward, but they're not.
And Daly's slipping down the pecking order at the moment. So, there's a lot of players there, but what is it going to be?
David Hawkshaw for me was one of the standout players in the A game against Munster. I thought he was absolutely brilliant, and that poor lad sitting there too. So,
that's good though. I mean, we talk it through, I feel better. Thanks, lads. This is what this podcast is all about.
And then Shane Jennings too. Okay, so we want to wrap it up because I know you have to run Danny, and I know you have to run Rob. So are we going to win?
We change. I would expect the second rows to maybe rotate a little bit. Murray to come in, get a start. Maybe Joe.
They were doing that a lot last year. They were doing a lot of that rotation. Murray, Dowling were swapping around quite a lot last year. Back row doesn't need to be changed, I don't think. Unless Conor Oliver's fit. Yeah. And we might see him, but we still haven't heard whether he is fit or not. I don't know. Did something come out since I left the Sportsground? It hadn't been announced by the time I left the Sportsground. I haven't had a chance to look at it yet. But anyway, are we going to win, Danny?
Yes.
Rob?
Yes. Yeah, just by a hair's breadth.
And then Niall, do you reckon is it a case of it depends on who they send across, or we'll just win no matter who they send across?
Not really, but I think we've enough to win at this stage of the season. Yeah, I part of me has come up with this idea that there mightn't come as fully loaded as well. Not that that's the be all and end all of it. Bearing in mind they'll be flying into Dublin, getting a bus down here and all that. I suspect they're not that used to. Well, they're used to coming to Dublin, of course. But, there's a bit of travel in it for them.
But I look back, and my worry is that we've only won one of the last 5 at home against Glasgow. Actually, we only have one of the last 9 against them in total. So since beating them in the semi-final, so.
Yeah, I think they're kind of certainly a bit of a bogey team for Connacht, like, for sure, and they've no fear of coming here. Plus, they've Nigel know these guys inside out, but Connacht, not that's backs to the wall, obviously not, but Connacht they need to back up what they've done.
Yes,
the previous week. And there's a big onus on them. I mean,
absolutely. There's expectation now. There's expectation, and the coaches are talking us up, and the players are talking us up, and then too bloody right, because we've spent too long with the poor mouth, and there's no reason for us not to anymore. We've got a decent bloody squad now, and why don't we take these guys on? We certainly.
But Glasgow will be looking at the video of 30 minutes to 70 minutes on that match and going, "Oh, happy days!"
Absolutely.
Guys.
That switch off was really poor.
It was.
I don't think it happens again.
Yeah, that's what I'm going to say. Let's see how good this coaching team is, and the quality of the likes of having someone like Fardy there now. Let's make sure that, he should be the type of guy who sort of says that, okay, that's not going to happen again, and this is why it's not going to happen again, and give them the tools to make sure it doesn't happen again. Because it was defensive slips. If you look at the tries, they were all one person slipped off a tackle somewhere along the way. It wasn't, a major cock up and whatever. Someone slipped off a tackle, apart from the 4th try, which was I think it was a line-out maul. But the others were one person just making a bad call. And of course, we'll get back to our normal finishes of these midweek podcasts with William giving us the results from last weekend and the fixtures for the coming weekend for the URC.
On Saturday, October the 21st, Zebre 36, Ulster 40, Connacht 34, Ospreys 26, Dragons 17, Edinburgh 22, Lions 33, Stormers 35, Cardiff Rugby 22, Benetton 23, Munster 34, Sharks 21. And on Sunday, October the 22nd, Bulls 63, Scarlets 21, Glasgow 43, Leinster 25. And now we look ahead to the fixtures for next weekend. On Saturday, October the 28th, at 1 p.m, Ospreys versus Zebre. At 3 p.m, Connacht versus Glasgow and Stormers versus Scarlets. At 4:55, Leinster versus the Sharks, and at 5 p.m, Edinburgh versus the Lions. On Sunday, October the 29th, at 2 p.m. Irish time, Benetton versus Munster. At 2:30 p.m, Dragons versus Cardiff. And at 5 p.m, Ulster versus the Bulls. And it's also confirmed now that the Connacht versus Munster URC game on January the 1st, 2024 will kick off at the Sportsground at 3 p.m.
Loose, cut it loose. Break out or nothing changes. Sad and confused. Don't wait until